Welcome, listeners, to Thru the Sightglass, a podcast that dives deep into the fascinating world of craft beer and celebrates the incredible individuals who shape its vibrant landscape. Join us on a journey where we explore the nuances of this amazing industry and the remarkable people who contribute to its richness and diversity. And today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Noah of Bissell Brothers Brewing. Thank you so much, Noah, for making time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much. We just introduced you. Can you give us a little bit about you and like what your role here is at Bissell Brothers, and then we'll jump into the questions.
My name's Noah Bissell. I'm one half of the co-founders of this company with, believe it or not, my brother, my brother Peter, who I think we can hear cackling somewhere in the background. He's a very loud laugh.
Love that.
But yeah, I kind of refer to myself. Early on, it was always very much head brewer was sort of my, but as the company's expanded, not on the brew deck as much as I'd like to be. So yeah, kind of co-founders, how I refer to myself.
Gotcha. I mean, wearing a myriad of hats, but it's like the graduation from like, oh, this is much bigger than what it started out to be, so I need to play some different roles.
Yeah, totally. Not really, not my comfort zone, but you got to do what you got to do when you have your own company.
Yeah,
Truthful.
seriously.
Yeah.
Love that so much. So where did you grow up? Where did y'all grow up?
Yeah, we grew up about 2.5 hours north of here in Piscataquis County. It was the smallest by population county in Maine.
Okay.
A town of about 2,000 people, Milo.
Nice. Is it pretty rural?
Very rural, yeah. Maybe 45 minutes outside of Bangor. Which is a town of like 30,000, was a big city to us growing up. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up there?
I think in retrospect, like very idyllic. There was a lot of like the tropes, the good tropes of small town, like a lot of freedom. Your parents we never locked the door growing up, which even seems strange now thinking about that, but no, just like riding your bike places. There was a lot of time spent making movies with friends on the little rinky-dink golf course there.
Right.
Nice.
Glad they're not posted now. I know.
Oh my God!
I know. I'm thankful that we
Yeah.
just like made the videos and they're just like
I know.
on a cassette or a VHS
Yeah,
or
I don't
something
even have
somewhere.
the,
Like you're
the
like I don't
capability
even know.
to play them anymore. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Right.
That was magical when you found like your parents gave you their old, like art, the recording
Camera
player.
Just a
or
gigantic,
something.
thing you have to put in your
And
shoulder.
it was always the person too, where it was like, we don't need you on the scene, so you get to be the cameraman.
Yeah, right. No designated
Yeah.
Love that
positions.
so
Yeah.
much. Is it just you and your brother as the Bissell Brothers, or is there any other siblings?
Yep, just the two of
Just
us.
the two.
There's about a 6.5 year age gap between us.
Okay.
So
Are you older or younger?
I'm younger.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So Peter was always like a really good brother and included me as much as he could, but
Nice.
six years
6
is like
years,
forever when
yeah.
you're 10 and 16 or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So always thought he was like the coolest guy ever. But we weren't really like living a shared life except
Right.
on like when we were at home.
Yeah.
And then as I got a little older and the playing field kind of levels, we've gotten a lot closer.
Yeah, love that.
You can relate to that more because I grew up in a
Yeah.
blended family, but my blood siblings, I'm middle, but Tanner is only a year and a half older, and then Taylor's only a year and a half younger,
there's,
so
we're like
wow.
right in
blood
line.
brothers.
Yeah.
They're, like,
And
so
then even my
close.
blended family, my step siblings, they were all like right in there. Like Tanner, Kayla, me, Corey, Taylor, we were all like just like a year apart. So we were always like involved in each other's nonsense. Not really a separation, but you
I have
have
a little bit of a separation.
Yeah.
I'm one of four, and like my sister, I'm really close to her, but she's 4 years older. And then
Yeah.
the gap between my younger brother and my sister is like almost 8 years.
Yeah.
But, so yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good time though.
Totally.
love it.
A lot of
Yeah.
we didn't. My mom and dad are both from like upstate New York originally, but a lot of families there are have been around for a while. So I was always like super jealous of my friends that had like a shitload of cousins and the big
big family
big
around.
thing like that.
Nice.
For sure.
So yeah. Anyway, so it sounds like a similar sort of deal with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So what did it look like? Maybe like post high school, college. What were you up to? What were you and your brother
what were you
doing?
interested in as well? I mean,
Yeah.
I think Maine usually involves a lot of the outdoors too.
Yeah, and that my dad retired, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. But his whole career for me growing up was working in Baxter Park.
Oh, okay.
Which,
awesome.
Which is like maybe an hour or so from where we grew up. So whether we liked it or not, that was going to be part of sort of our, and we liked it, don't get me wrong, but no, so hiking was always a huge part of the summer.
Nice.
Weren't really a hunting family, but both played a lot of sports, and then so did that in college or high school. Definitely not a college athlete. I wish.
Right.
And just from sort of like the ease and my graduating class was like 60 kids, so the idea of like really going somewhere far for college was a little too much to swallow at that point. So again, kind of followed in my cool older brother's footsteps and went to UMO for my first year, which was like, at the time, it felt like a different world, but it was like 40 minutes from home. So it's not stepping out of my comfort zone as little as possible. Liked it there, but it was still a little too big, so transferred after my first year to Maine Farmington, which is kind of out in western Maine. And Farmington's an awesome town. We were just actually there this weekend for an event. I just almost forgot how like charming it is.
Oh, nice.
And real close access to awesome hiking, skiing.
Love that.
In the area.
Yeah, and there was some good snow this weekend. So,
People were very, very happy.
Yeah, for sure.
I worked part-time at REI, and everybody was flooding in yesterday for like snowshoes for their cross-country skis to get back buffed.
No, it's been a couple of rough winters here. So like I was saying before we got recording, it's like I'm not like a super avid outdoor person trying to like work more stuff in to actually, get through the winter a little easier. But it's a huge part of like the economy for a lot of the parts of the States. It's really nice to actually see. It was like dismal last year. We got like 2 feet of snow like April 1st.
Wow.
So it's like a little too late for anyone to do anything with this. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Well, we've been enjoying Maine winter so far, so it's been super fun.
Yeah, it hasn't been too brutally cold
Not
this year.
too brutally cold.
No, not bad. Not bad at all.
We've been doing just fine. So
probably just lucky for us, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, did your parents drink at all? Like, what was kind of the alcohol scene for you growing up?
Yeah, I was thinking about that a little before this. Like, there wasn't. My dad was like, the Sam Adams if we were out to eat, like a single Sam Adams, call it a day.
Yeah.
My mom never really drank at all, not for any real reason. I think just sort of probably never picked it back up after pregnancy or whatever.
Yeah.
So there wasn't. Like any high schooler, I certainly tried my hand at some illicit drinking, and it's fun for sure, but it was never macro beer never really hit me in the way where it was like I'm a beer guy at all until a bunch of sort of serendipity after would have been my second year in college. My brother, who had been living in Portland for a while at that point, worked. Like, he was a wedding photographer, was kind of his big passion, but also working in restaurants. And he was living with like 5 other friends or so.
Can I guess? Were they home brewing?
No.
Man.
But good guess, very good guess.
The first time I've ever been wrong.
Yeah. And an open. I didn't really know what I was going to do for the summer, and an opening in his apartment came up, and I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So. Moved down here, lived like outside of either, my parents' house or a dorm for the first time. And he got me a job at a restaurant out on Great Diamond Island, which is like in the Casco Bay. So it's like a short sort of ferry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. I definitely underqualified for that job. So it was my first time kind of having like a bunch of things together. We were maybe a quarter mile from the homebrew shop.
Okay.
I had a little bit of money in my pocket kind of for the first time ever, and a lot of time during a lot of the days. I was like the lowest man on the totem pole of the staff. So,
you didn't have any seniority.
Yeah. So, quite a bit of time, but still plenty of money for me. So I think all those, I've always been a relatively creative person, and by that point, I had, in the dorms the previous year, there was a couple people that like were way too old to still be in college, but were, let alone living in the dorms. But anyway,
the super seniors.
Doing
their victory lap 2 or 3 times.
Yes, but thankfully that one of those super seniors was always like pretty willing to, I think knowing I didn't like love normal beer, but for whatever reason, sort of just the rough idea of what craft beer was interesting to me.
Yeah.
So I would ask for like, hey, can you pick me up a mixed 12-pack or whatever of like Geary's, Gritty's, Dundee was like another one I would see every
nice.
now and then. Yeah. So with that sort of seed planted, then moving down to Portland, my brother was definitely willing to buy me beer, and just sort of I
Nice.
think sort of the window into what people were drinking at the restaurant. Allagash White for sure. Like, what the hell is that?
I was gonna ask, like, what were some of the beers that really like stuck out to you? That
At that time, really, it was Allagash White was the thing. Just that glow in the glass was unlike anything I had seen. So I'd have Pete pick me up that whenever he was around and willing. But then I was just sort of intrigued by it enough, wanted a hobby. So found my way to the homebrew store and just sort of got bit by that bug extremely hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought when you said you were like moving in with people. That's kind of like we've heard that story, and it's like we love it, and I think it's like such a like precursor to.
Well, I think everyone was super excited at the time, like, oh, you're going to start brewing your own beer, as was I. And then when they tasted that first beer, the excitement definitely got like vacuumed out of the room. It's like, oh, this isn't all it's cracked up to be.
It's harder than it looks.
Yeah, a lot harder.
The
than
artistry behind it.
For sure.
You might want to pick up like wood carving.
Yeah,
or,
anything else. Yeah, I don't think this is your calling.
Yeah.
So like most homebrewers, messed it up for a long time. Brewed quite a bit that summer, but was definitely just like went so hard into the the How to Brew, the John Palmer book.
Yeah.
There was
great book, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely stuff on the internet then, but not to the level like there was over the next couple years. It felt like.
Did the homebrew shop help at all? Like.
Yeah, for sure. I was also like, I definitely kind of always struggle a little bit with wanting to, especially then, like, I don't know, asking the wrong questions or whatever. So some sort of like artificial comfort and just I'll fuck it up on my own and then learn.
Gotcha.
So did that for the summer and then was living off campus for the first time when I went back to Farmington and pretty much brewed as much as I could possibly afford to. Lot of fake confidence from my roommates in college were much more forgiving than the actual adults that could buy beer that I was living with this summer.
Yeah. They're like free alcohol. Yeah, you're doing
whatever.
great. You're doing great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, this is drinkable. It's great. I
Yeah,
love it.
I wouldn't even go that far, but to them, yes, the beers did disappear. Just continued to sort of scratch that itch as much as I possibly could.
Do you remember the first recipe that you brewed or what style it was?
It was definitely a kit, definitely like an extract kit.
Okay, gotcha.
I think it was supposed to be a hef, but it was
Okay.
more sort of like Band-Aid water.
Oh,
yeah. Pseudo beer.
You got a crash course and a bunch of phenols and off flavors.
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember like a beer that you were like, this is what I want to replicate in like homebrew? Was there like a recipe that you were like chasing?
I did a lot of Allagash White adjacent. So that was probably, without kind of knowing it, probably why I picked the hef recipe. There's probably a nut brown, a hef, and an oatmeal stout or
whatever
something
extra
for the free
kits.
kits.
Whatever they had.
Yeah.
And then since there wasn't the proximity to that homebrew store, I started like, I think at the time it was like Austin Homebrew Shop, and they had like a little bit more intricate kits that were almost like explicitly designed to be clone recipes.
Okay.
Then like, I don't think it's going on anymore, but there was this podcast network called the Brewing Network that they had this show called Can You Brew It that was exclusively about like clone recipes.
Oh, interesting.
So I hit that really, really hard over the next year. And, it's still, there wasn't a specific memory of like the first homebrew batch that was good.
Yeah.
But sometime over that next 6 months, it started to kind of congeal, made the transition to all grain brewing at some point, and just continued to hammer it harder and harder. Basically, worked to pay for my home brewing equipment, my home brewing ingredients, and then maybe like a year and a half. Sorry. About a year and a half after I had been home brewing, I was, at a point where I was. To anyone that even kind of vaguely knew me, it was like my identity, pretty much.
Right.
It was like, oh yeah, he's
the
crazy brewer guy.
Oh, nice.
And and I think just from beating my head against the wall enough, like the beer had gotten. I'm sure I'd be like repulsed if I had tasted any of it now, but got good enough where I just started to build like a little bit of confidence. And so between like the winter of my senior year in college. I had been doing it enough where I was like, I think I want to make a career out of this, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
I had been in school for psychology.
I was going to ask what you were in school for.
And did see like a path to maybe like either being like a therapist or guidance counselor, just kind of weighing those. But then that as like brewing became more and more of a thing, it was sort of like, let's just finish college just because I'm this far along.
I see. Gotcha.
And then my brother was also he had sort of seen this from day one. This germ planted and grew into what it was. And like I had said, he'd been doing like commercial photography. He was really good at it. Was self-employed, but I think was getting a little burnt out on wedding after wedding after wedding.
Kind of the grind of it all.
Yeah, and just sort of, I think in his eyes, somewhat of the monotony of it. But was all into like sort of like Ryan Holiday type books, like just he's a natural marketer, and I think he also felt like maybe not his full potential being realized with, and I was coming to the end of college trying to figure out what a foot in the door in the industry would look like. And I think the timing just really, really worked out great, where we were both looking for that next thing. And
did he like your beer that you were brewing?
By that time,
yeah.
by that
time,
he had been brutally honest.
He skipped the trial.
Brothers will do that.
Yes.
Yeah, he skipped the trial phase and was like, "This is very
exactly.
good."
Yeah, go back to Farmington, come back in a year. Yeah, when you have something good.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool that at the same points in your life you had a similar chapter opening up where you had opportunities to either continue on a path that you were on, or take this bet, take this venture on something totally new.
Yeah.
What did those conversations look like?
I think there was really just one big conversation I remember where I think we were both kind of feeling each other again, sort of like younger brother thing. The idea of asking him to sort of come along with whatever the fuck I was thinking, which I didn't. I want to do this, whatever that means. So he kind of, I think, picked up on like, man, this kid's really serious about this. I was probably at that point home brewing like twice a week.
Yeah. Was there anything in y'all's area other than the homebrew shops, or outside of like Allagash White, or Allagash itself? Were there any other breweries that y'all would go to?
Well, at that point, I wasn't. This was still. I turned 21 that winter, so I was. Part of the home brewing, what that solved was I couldn't buy beer.
Yeah.
But no, in Farmington there was no brewery there. At that time, Maine Beer was about to open probably. So this was like winter fall 2011. So Maine Beer was coming up. Rising Tide was coming up. Allagash.
But you had to come to Portland for it, so it wasn't like there was anything where you.
I think the only other big one would have been like Shipyard. For
sure. Okay. Geary's, Gritty's was doing a lot more package then. Sebago, shout out Sebago. Sebago. I just kind of re-fell in love with Sebago.
Nice.
Recently, Sebago's killer.
Nice.
But there was in Farmington, Ron's Market was had no business being as good of a beer store as it was. It was like pizza slices for the college kids, and I think John, the owner, just like really liked beer, so it was basically his excuse to buy a bunch of beer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was a huge part of what crystallized everything too. Fell in love with like Victory, Southern Tier, some of sort of the bigger
and stuff that you can't get.
Breweries.
I think everybody we've talked to so far has like some hole in the wall place where it was either a corner market gas station or some deli that also happened to have just amazing selections of beer because the owner was like, it's my excuse to bring it in.
Fully driven by passion. It's like this can't be economically smart in this area. and that, I don't know, like one of the themes I think already is like that the right type of passion really is contagious. And
Yeah.
going into being a customer in that store, it was like you couldn't help but want to, because especially when you're just discovering beer, it's like the layers that you uncover, it feels endless.
Yeah.
You know, of like all these styles, all these breweries, and it's just kind of a magical time.
Yeah.
Nice. Was
Well,
there
that's
ever
so
a
much.
beer that like grabbed your attention where it's like, I want to make something just as good as this? I know you talked about like how your foray into beer was Allagash White, because you were like, this is brilliant. It tastes great. The color, the look of it. Would have been that? Or was it something totally different?
Probably like later on when I started to like get the really like get into hops, like a lot of people, that seems to be like a natural. I think that's sort of shifted on its head a little bit now with just sort of, I think hazy IPA is an intro beer for a lot of people nowadays.
Right.
But that style didn't really exist at all then. So I remember it was literally my 21st birthday. It was the first time I had done a shift at the restaurant, and the restaurant I'd been working at on the island, they had like a sister restaurant in Waterville Valley. So over like holidays, I'd go work there for like a week. So some beer store in New Hampshire, I had, was working that night, went there before to sort of stock up on a couple mixed 6-packs of,
Nice.
and also like the subtle stuff of like what's not distributed in Maine might be in New Hampshire.
Right.
So,
Nice.
So Stone Ruination, that was the first time I had Stone Ruination that night. And that was like, I'd had plenty of hoppy beer to that point, but something about that was like an absolute epiphany.
Oh,
that
nice.
night. I remember just drinking alone at like, I was actually staying at my girlfriend, now my wife's mom's house. So everyone was in bed after I got back. So just in the darkness, just drinking this Ruination, being like,
21st
what the
birthday,
fuck? Yeah, this is so
that's
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Love that.
That'd
and
be a
then-
great movie scene too.
Yeah,
I can imagine
seriously.
low light kitchen table.
Yeah,
You're tired after
trying to
work.
be so quiet.
Yeah.
Then the next night, actually at the restaurant, had my first legal beer there. That was a Celebration. That hit
Oh,
so
yeah.
good too. And then that timeline, going back to finish my last semester of college, it was like you could start to get Maine beer at Ron's.
Okay.
Hop Devil, Victory Hop Devil
Oh,
was an
yes.
early one. But yeah, I'd never. Those beers were all great, but there was something very special about Maine Beer Company's beers, because they were they still had that. I mean, there wasn't like a hazy IPA thing to compare to,
Right.
but they still had that that like hyper cleanness that really good West Coast IPAs do, but. The bitterness was more restrained, and they weren't filtered, so there was just like this added layer of softness that I never really had. So I was
nice.
drinking as much peeper and lunch as I could,
Sorry.
as John would stock, basically, at the store.
We brought you some, so.
I love it. Yeah.
We
Just
did the
still in love with
previous,
their beer.
so.
Yeah.
Still in love with their beer.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
that's amazing. So the conversation with your brother,
Yeah.
you're closing in on your probably graduation date. You're like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? He's working probably here in Portland, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so.
Yeah, it was just sort of like, I don't really remember exactly. We were home for Christmas. I had made some sort of like rye brown ale or something, weird homebrew shit. And it did turn out really good. I think it was like from that Can You Brew. It was a clone of something.
Oh, yeah.
And I was really proud of it. And we were just drinking them one night, and I'd kind of broached the subject, or at least told him like I don't know how, but I do want to get into the brewing industry. And he just kind of said like, well, do you want to do it together? And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and then that was kind of the rest. About almost 2 years to the day from that point, we opened up.
Oh,
my
that's
gosh.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's so
Again,
cool.
this is just a movie. I can just picture it right
I
now.
know. Well, and it's cool because like we have siblings, and like we have conversations about stuff that they can do, and but to have your one brother, your older cool brother, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're cool
Wouldn't
too.
use those same terms
Yeah.
now.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
He's going to hear this.
Yeah.
Let's not
I know. I'm sorry.
boast
I'm sorry.
too much.
Yeah,
But
blow 'em
still,
up.
to look up to somebody and be like, and then see your passion,
Yeah.
and then want to invest in your passion.
Totally.
Like, that's really cool.
It was absolutely like the reflection of like, oh, if you believe in me, I actually now believe in myself a lot more.
Yeah.
And from a practical standpoint, he had so many tools that I had a sense for, but it really sunk in. Like, he's, like I say, he's like a born marketer. Had already been running his own small business.
Right.
I was just pretty much focused on making really good beer and nothing else.
Yeah.
So that yin and yang has served us really,
That's
really well
amazing.
as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the different sides of both of you
Yeah.
that work together
Yeah.
harmoniously.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
I love
then,
that so much.
so graduated college with the plans to move down here. He helped me out with another job. So basically for that year and a half between college and when we opened, I worked at the Thirsty Pig, which is just an awesome beer bar.
Nice.
Right across the street from Navarre Res on Exchange
Okay,
Street.
gotcha.
And that, like, I was just really excited to be, like, working there. Just, like, this place is awesome, access to these great beers. But it really proved, like, really serendipitous to sort of, like, without really knowing it, like, providing a window into the industry itself. Like, it's kind of a big industry bar. So it was also turned out to be a place where I could, like, give homebrews to regulars and stuff like that.
Oh, rad.
So you're
Market
still
testing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think another thing I should mention too with Pete's like natural marketing mind, way before we were open, he was already like making labels for beers, like
rad.
He's really good at graphic design too. So
these homebrews are coming out, and
looking
it has like
almost
a label.
like totally.
That's so
And
cool.
I think the first time we did Substance was like not too long after that conversation. That was kind of my rotation, was be like I'd brew Substance almost every week as a home brewer, then something else.
Right.
So Substance, I must have brewed, I don't know, 50 or 60 batches of that
Oh,
kind
damn.
of with tweaks every time.
Yeah.
Before we opened up, so it only made sense for us to open with that beer. Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
come up with that name, Substance?
Well, after my freshman year of college, we did a cross-country road trip.
Okay.
And it's like silly. I'm not being like, mushrooms tell you everything.
Yeah.
But we were on this camping trip, we camped pretty much every
Yeah.
night. We were somewhere in Nevada. I had brought some mushrooms along with the trip. Neither of us had done them ever at that point. And, we were just alone in the woods having a blast. And we kept kind of referring to, the mushrooms as like this crazy substance.
Nice.
And,
Yeah, you
it
did
was
a spirit walk.
stupid, funny. And then for whatever reason, when we were trying to figure out a name for, our IPA, for whatever reason, that just seemed like it fit.
Perfect.
Yeah, the
The
substance.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
That
That's
is
so-
so
We-
sick.
these are the golden nugget stories. We're like, yes, when people listen to us, they will now understand. That's where the name comes from.
I mean,
That's
like,
amazing.
We
Yeah.
literally, like, there's so many times that I'm like, why did you name why is your brewery the name it is? Why is this beer named the way it is? And they, like, say it, and you're like, yes. And now
Yeah.
you know the story, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So,
Well, thank you for the cross country road trip in the Nevada desert.
yeah, that lately
And-
stuck
and
with us
whatever
for like
shaman
3
that
years.
visited you that was like
Yes.
substance. I love it.
I know it. Yeah,
I
I
love
know
that
it.
so much. So, okay, so you're selling, or you're giving your
Yeah. No.
You're
giving
Yeah.
You're
you're
like
giving
trial
your
testing your
homebrew
beer
Totally.
out at Thirsty
Yeah.
Pig.
at
Yep.
Thirsty Pig. What are those next steps for you and Pete to
Yeah.
go forward?
Well, part of why that was so just helpful for us too is like we don't come from money. We as our business plan sort of formulated, and we figure out what size that we wanted to open with a 10-barrel system, do it on as much of a shoestring as possible, but not set ourselves up. We were going to have to get a bigger system immediately.
Yeah.
Which there's Austin Street
Right.
opened up very close to us, and they did sort of the 1-barrel system, and it was so there's a million ways to
Yeah.
sort
you
of
just have to
Yeah.
find what's
but-
best for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had together. Pete had a little bit. I think I put all my money, which was like $1,000, into the business. Pete did more than that, but not significantly. So we needed investors.
Yeah.
We figured out this plan with the bank where if we needed, the total cost was going to be about $350,000, which is crazy to think. That we could do it for that cheap at that point, but also I've never seen that amount of money still. So that idea seemed like, how are we ever going to do this?
Yeah.
So the homebrew is also sort of a proof of concept for a lot of people. Like, no, we're not. This is going to be hard, and there's no guarantees, but this beer is good. And then on top of that, it's already sort of marketed in a way that's appealing. So I think it was an easier sell than some, So slowly sort of started to raise money there, and then I think we had to raise 150 ourselves, and we got the rest was a loan from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working on that constantly. And then another thing with the pig just was such a help was I got a call one morning when I was setting up the bar from a number I didn't recognize, and I think I was busy and got to it later. So check my voicemail, and it was Dave Kleben from Maine Beer Company, who
damn,
again, like idols of mine at that still, but especially now. It's like, wow. And he called. He had heard kind of through the grapevine that sort of the pig had provided that we were looking for a space, that we were trying to get open. And he called because they were they had been in their spot for maybe 2 or 3 years, and they were building out Freeport at that time, so they knew their space would be open. And I didn't fully understand the scope of how much money they ultimately saved us at the time, but just the brewing equipment is expensive for sure, but so much of the expense is the hard piping, the steam,
installation,
the boiler. So how it worked out was we were able to move into their space after they were done with the boiler and all the steam piping still in place. We kept their HLT, their grist case, which was also cool. So a few things like that.
Nice.
Tasting room culture was very nascent at that time. A law had recently been changed in Maine where you could actually pour beers on premise.
Like D2C.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all that was new. The timing worked out fantastic for us because we never knew anything different.
Oh, wow.
So I say that to say there was a tasting room there, but it felt more like a waiting room at a dentist's office or something. It was very, very small. But it was great for us. Crazy neon painting, which is so not the Maine beer aesthetic.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm not really sure why they painted the whole place neon green, but worked for us.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, compared to their facility now, which looks like a high-end hotel.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we got the keys to that place about 6 months before we ultimately opened, but so helpful to not only have the sort of the basic stuff you need to actually brew beer, one single little drain in the middle, plenty, no trenches, but we'll get to that later.
Right.
Yeah.
And just the money and ease they saved us by just thinking of us and being, generous in that sense of even offering sort of us first right of refusal, I guess you'd say, in the space, but also just sort of that budding lure that comes with one industrial way, and then Allagash right across the street, Geary's just a little further down.
Gosh.
And then we opened, not to jump too far ahead, but then with Austin Street and Foundation opening, I don't know, within 3 months of one another was also just insane.
So you had this, it's like a brewery alley. How was that community? Did it feel competitive, or were people more than willing to help you out with whatever you needed and then vice versa?
Totally helpful.
Wonderful.
Not as any knock to Foundation or Austin Street, but I think we were all figuring so much stuff out together. It was really looking at Allagash of please help us.
Yeah.
I remember on our first day of, this is so dumb to think about now, but we have this in Pete's fashion, he sets up the release party of everything. We're finally going to bring our first batch of substance and sell it there. And just in all the hustle and bustle of getting up to that point, I realized maybe 2 days before that we didn't have any way to actually test the carbonation of the beer. I knew sort of okay, this is the carb stone, this is CO2. Yeah. The CO2 goes in through the carb stone and the beer gets carbonated. But I didn't follow that thought all the way through to know how much carbonation is in the beer.
Right.
So Allagash gifted us a Zamenagel at the 11th hour, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
To allow us to get that first beer
that's
out.
So
That's
great.
amazing.
Yeah.
We've talked about because we've talked to a variety of breweries, and we've talked about we would love to have a couple of things that people could use as tools that we've purchased or somebody has sponsored us, and we can take it to brewers. They can do some testing or whatever, because those things are not cheap. All of the things in the brewery is not cheap.
Yeah.
And so,
right, totally. That was $1,000. So even if we had the foresight to order one, that would have been a lot of money for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you, Allagash.
Yeah,
for
thank you,
helping.
Allagash, forever. Yes.
Yeah, it didn't come out like a champagne brute,
The carb wasn't great, but it was good enough, and
There you
totally.
go.
That's
Wonderful.
so. What was that first day like for y'all? Were y'all just so giddy and happy? I'm just imagining.
I can't overstate how down to the wire it was. We basically walked over at 5 with the kegs that had finished carbonating the 15 minutes before that it took us to drive over there. So at first it was very stressful. The beer was good, but it was I think. And I've always had a tough relationship with our beer, just because it's always been very tough for me to just simply enjoy our beer without any thoughts creeping in of oh fuck, why didn't I? I knew I should have put that another 11 pounds of Citra in, or why'd we use this yeast, or whatever it is. And I think that was especially true just because this is the first time people are enjoying this in mass. So it was a mix of emotions of a lot of but people were stoked. The beer was out there, and then it was just fast improvements from that. It wasn't like a diacetyl bomb or anything. It was just kind of carved pretty brutally. So that was aesthetically, it wasn't our best batch, but
well, we all live and learn, and look what it's grown into.
For sure.
I think that's the key. Is it's never gonna. To someone's creative standard, it may never be perfect. So it's getting it out there. You got it out there.
And I think the where that I had no choice but to get it out there. Pete had been pumping this party for 2 months on this date. So there was no choice, but that's that sort of dynamic between us has always really worked well.
Nice.
Because if it was up to me, it'd be let's push this. We need to brew it again. It needs to be better. And when is it? To your point, I still don't. Now, 11 or 12 years later, it's still none of our beers are perfect, because what are you doing if they are?
Yeah,
always continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Can I ask how? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I ask? Obviously, I understand how y'all came up with the name, but how did y'all come up with the name?
I think it was quickly I think a go-to is some natural, rusted wood brewing or whatever. And I don't know, we tried a few things, we bounced around a few things like that. And I think really what, I think Pete's mind, how that worked was seeing how this is going to look in a logo. Mm-hmm. So I think the 3 Bs, he did a lot of work early on and kind of figured out this sort of thing where you know what it means if you know, but if not, there's sort of a bit of intrigue how they're...
So before I knew, I saw it and I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, it's Bissell Bros. I got it.
It does, I think, make a lot of people think there is a third brother, and there's not.
I did think that at first, but then we were Bissell Brothers Brewing.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I think
the third brother is brewing.
Yeah,
That's the third
or my
brother.
dad sometimes claims to be. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
No, that's totally great.
I was going to ask if it was a shamanistic journey that also brought about
the
logo.
No, that was kind of a one and done where that really resulted in something. Otherwise, that's I can't.
There was no substance used in the design of this. It would be though. I'd be like, dude, I had this thing implanted in my brain.
Yeah,
let me draw it out for you.
Yeah, we. I don't know what our beer would be like if it was truly fueled by mushrooms, maybe in another life.
Oh yeah, there's probably some breweries popping up like that right now. I was going to ask, how has that been as you've grown Bissell Brothers Brewing, and obviously you're watching the program, you're watching the beer, you're watching everything grow and evolve for your own like criticism for yourself, I kind of like how you touched on it, because it can be like a thief of joy when you create something, it's lovely, and everybody's like, it's so great, and you're like, yeah, but it could be better. So like, how have you managed that, or like what's changed about that for yourself as the company's going along?
Yeah, I've tried to. It's definitely evolved to a point where I can separate the two a little bit. I think in general, for the first, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years, this was like all I was doing. Like anyone, like probably most people, you know, starting something out. It was like, and it really became so much of my identity that I think that didn't help the cause.
Yeah.
You know, so as times. But it also got to a point where I was almost so not scared to drink, not scared to drink our beer, but having this association with drinking like our beer regularly that would sort of, I don't know, it was almost like a little torturous, because it was like knowing this thing that was our lifeblood, that I was going to taste it and only be able to sort of focus on the faults with it.
I see.
So I've, just for like functional purposes, I've definitely gotten a little bit better about separating the two, but it's taken a lot of time, and it's still not a super comfortable thing for me. For as it should be like the most comfortable thing for me, and I think that's also what frustrates me, is like, why can't I just see this as a beer, you know? But at the same, I think I got so sort of like skeeved out by it a little bit. I wasn't like purposefully tasting our beer enough, where you lose a little bit of connection then to what you even want to control, what you even want to change. So yeah, I feel like overall it's in a much better place now.
Nice.
But, yeah, it's been. I didn't anticipate it being that much of a struggle. Yeah.
I would definitely observe, and just from my time in the industry, I think it's like that's like a natural maturation through the process. Like when I started, I was super in depth about everything and being like, yo, if the beer is trash, we fucking dump it. I wasn't running the brewery. And hindsight, I look at my younger self being like, yeah, no head brewer wants to be like, this isn't true to spec, and their little keg washer's like, yeah, dude, dump this beer if it tastes like shit. He's like, no, you idiot. Like, we have to figure out something.
We have to pay you.
Yeah, exactly. And as you go along, you learn like the checks and balances for that. And I think that is really healthy. So I'm glad that like that's been able to overcome. I think it's also a product of this industry. It's always insanely creative, passionate, ambitious people. Yeah. And I think that is just like the perfect, mixture for having a really hard self-critic. And I think it's like everybody in this industry deals with that to some level and extent. So it's almost like the bane of the job, but it's cool. It's cool to hear success stories about it, because I think there are people maybe searching for it, and sometimes giving them words can help them find the right combination to be like, not everything I do is trash. It's okay.
Yeah. And it can also be tough though, because then so much of your validation is not from you.
Yes.
When you lean too far into that other direction, and I think that was an important sort of corner to turn, and it wasn't an instantaneous thing at all, but sort of realizing like, well, just on beer reviews, or our beer's being traded for, cool, but like that has a pretty short shelf life, excuse the pun, to really be fueling yourself forever, and like no matter now again 12 years into it or whatever, like beer is so different, and that would have exhausted itself like completely anyway, looking for validation and sort of like, we don't have a line anymore. What's this mean? So I totally think you're right, and I think another sort of unique thing about beer is that there is this sort of delayed feedback loop. Like no matter what, you're not really going to be able to judge it for another 2 weeks, which means that whatever insight you get from that then can't come to form for another at least 2 weeks as like the most aggressive timeline. So I think I struggle with that too, like wanting to maybe fix something in the glass, which you can't. The beer's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, I can fix this.
Yeah. Next time. Yeah.
That's actually really, I like what you said, because it kind of segues into like my next thought or in question about, I had heard about your beer on the West Coast from people that traded beer. And I remember doing beer shares with my friends, and some of these people in this group, not going to name names, but they are always like, well, what are you bringing that's going to be worth me sharing this beer or sharing my Jester King.
I heard you talk a little bit on I think it was the Austin Street episode about that.
And but I will say, so with the line mentality, because I started in 2015, and I feel like that was like a big heyday. I know like Treehouse, I know Bissell Brothers, Holy Mountain in Seattle was big for it too. What's your maybe like viewpoint or like looking back on it? Do you think, and it's not saying it's anybody's fault, but do you think that was like beneficial or negative, or like where do you stand on how that was for a business? Because you were right in the middle of it, of being like one of the biggest people that were hyping up and trading for and in search of for Bissell Brothers.
Yeah. I think about it a lot just because it's so, even in the moment, we would talk like, well, this isn't gonna last forever. Like people, and I think for the overall like sake of it's not a great way to. Beer shouldn't be. Ultimately, it is like the people's beverage. There's a yin and yang where it's like a lot of effort goes into it. It can be great, but holding it on this pedestal of like I think long term, I'm really glad you don't see as much of that anymore. I think did some weird things for us because we pretty much opened into that. That was like what beer was at that time. Not from our control. It was just how. I was never like a big beer trader, but I was on that same wave as a beer consumer. Like
absolutely
searching stuff out, and it was nascent enough where you really did have to search it out at that time. And in a way, that's at least different now. So I think it didn't create false expectations, but it in some ways I think made us as a company and probably some other brewers at that time like ill prepared for life now. Obviously didn't change overnight, and like I say, like there was always a sense of like, well, of course this can't last forever, and but I think it definitely maybe just delayed some of the skills we've learned down the road of just like diversification, have like reliance on certainly a lot more leaning into like shelf stability and quality, because I mean when you're pretty much selling a batch in a weekend from your door, like there's the assumption that, and at that time we started with not to go off track, but we started with a very manual canning line.
Gotcha.
Like a 2-head. I think it was like
cask, or
it was a goose, but it was the fourth one they'd ever made, and it was literally you held the empty cans up. It was almost like a crowler machine.
Essentially.
It was basically a crowler machine. So I say that to say, like, thank God we didn't have a DO meter then. Because those would have been,
and you're right. That's great, because it is like the trend, or I wouldn't say trend, but the demographic at that time, they would buy that, and that beer would be gone like probably in 3 days.
Yeah.
And I know because friends would do that. They'd be like, I got all this beer. And it'd be like 3 flats, and like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they drink their last 4-pack. I'm like, holy shit, that's like $200 worth of beer gone in 3 days.
And to that sort of just like that culture of the consumption and sharing of it, not in a preachy way, but that's not sustainable either. Like I think most people that have at least lived through beer at that time, like to buy cases of stuff it's not even like an overconsumption thing. It's just the means of financially that you can't do that forever. For most people. So I think like long term, like that was never going to be a thing. That I think it really propelled beer or craft beer, whatever term you like to use, into just the general population in a way. It had been sort of this secret niche for a lot of people before. But I think for the overall sustainability of it, I think there's been a little bit of a hangover from that not that wave crashing, but coming back down to earth. But I think for just like sustainability of a business, I think it's a really good thing that everyone's sort of dealt with in their own way, and will continue to do. Because I think it actually makes you think in a way where you didn't have to think when people are just showing up, and it is like ultimately your responsibility as a business to be thinking about more things and like, well, what should our allotments be today? Like that's not really, don't get me wrong, that was what we like the most pressing thing to think about at that time. But overall, I'm really thankful to have gone through it. And certainly like financially, it really helped our business so much.
Exactly.
So I'm not at all helped us allow to move to this spot. But yeah, I think overall, I'm also happy that's not how things are anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just sustainable for y'all now. Like
Totally.
being able to, like you said, it's the people's drink. Like being able to have an amazing tap room place where people can come and enjoy your drink on the daily, and it's not just like a one-time thing every once in a while that's happening. Like
we get to say yes to people a lot more, which is
yeah.
also nice.
Hell yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's just
Hell
like
yeah.
I feel like it's really cool, and I think like I don't know, I never got to experience that craft beer part, and so like
It's okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
We can recreate it one time. We can stand in
I
line
just
for
wanna
4
stand in
hours
line.
and get drunk before the doors
Yeah.
open.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Yeah.
But like I mean, like it's like it's always those things, those stories that you hear, and you're like, oh, I never got to experience
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, like we're here in y'all's tap room,
I think
and like that's just like so enjoyable to think that like maybe back in the day, like we wouldn't have been like sitting at a table in y'all's craft.
Yes, the general
yeah,
experience for a
experience.
normal person has gone through the roof
Yes.
compared to what it
Yeah.
almost used to be like a gluttony for punishment.
I think
sort of
so.
like how things exist.
Yeah.
And so I'm
existed,
thankful now
yeah.
that like we've been in Maine for a few months now, and we've been able to come in a few times and just enjoy being in y'all's tap room and enjoy y'all's beer, and it's been truly enjoyable. So like I love that like y'all have been able to move on, and also it still be beneficial for y'all.
For sure.
Like I think
yeah.
if it was if it was like, oh, we don't have this anymore, and then y'all weren't able to be here, that'd be a
Yeah.
different story. But the
Yeah.
fact that y'all have been able to like, we were able to be here now, and we're still doing well, and like doing these things,
And-
like that's great.
Yeah, and you know what you know. Like I'm in the Maine Brewers Guild right now, so it's been interesting to talk. I had mentioned Sebago earlier, and so Kai Adams is one of the owners of Sebago, and talking to one of the big things about the guild is like how are we providing value right now where a lot of brewers are struggling.
Yeah.
You know, what is our role to help with that? So it's you know what you know from what our timeline is, but talking to Kai, they opened in I think 1998, something like that. So he's sort of seen, as he describes it, like this is like the third sort of
Like iteration.
iteration of like downturn a little bit.
Yeah.
It comes back up, and beer's older than the hills. You know, it's
Right.
not
Oh, yeah.
going anywhere, but just what it means. What it means to people is constantly changing, and I think for the first like 3 years of operation, there was really no impetus to change much of anything. So I think it's always also like enabled us to hire a lot. Like we employ so much more people now because of these different channels our beer is sold for or sold through, the other things we offer. There's not really a need for a huge staff when you know, people are just cycling through, and so. I don't mean to sound ungrateful for that.
No,
time, but,
I think it's wise. I think it's just good observation, and I think another thing that people kind of forget is that. So I was thinking about this when we were talking about like the line mentality that was happening with a lot of breweries, and people will kind of nowadays will look back and be like, "Man, that was like the glory days of like drinking beer," and it's like, no, you just made it special, and it was special,
totally.
And this is also just as special, and it's something like I've taken a year off brewing. And doing this podcast and traveling has reignited and reminded me, it's like, no, there's special things that are happening all around in this industry, but we're just force-fed a lot of things that are like negative or sad or depressing, and like the downturn, all the declination happening in beer. It's like, no, there's still magical things going on, and you just have to be able to pay attention to it.
Totally.
And it's like those same people, it's like, well, have you tried a Bissell Brother beer since then? And they'll be like, well, no, because I'm on to the next hype thing. It's like, I bet if you tried it, it'd be just as good, or it'd bring you back to that exact moment, and you'd be like, oh, fuck, how have I been missing this? It's like, it's still there.
Yeah.
You just have to want to see it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. How did y'all get from y'all's original location to this location?
Another sort of serendipitous timing where when I first moved to Portland in 2012, this whole area, Thompson's Point, there was the bus station and train station, but this was all like abandoned building, just sort of like a derelict area. So some developers or investors or whatever had honed in on trying to redevelop Thompson's Point. And our lease was, we knew we were going to need to do something. Like the beauty of Industrial Way is sort of like the modular nature of the units, but that's also very limiting in terms of just what you can provide. Like you can only rock the pallet fence patio for so long. And also by us, we were also Austin Street and Foundation were going through the same thing as us. Like really need to expand. So it also, not that we did it for like, oh, we'll help you guys out by moving, but everyone sort of won because there was also then more space for them to be creative with their needs. But they had reached out to Peter, and it was really scary for me to just, in general, like, that's such a big move, a place where currently no one goes at all. Yeah. There's no reason for anyone to go.
You're creating like a destination brewery.
Kinda, yeah. And there was also this other stuff. They still have like all these plans for things around it. Like there's a big concert series here now in the summer.
Oh, okay, awesome. In the amphitheater.
The Children's Museum has, of all things, been a huge help for us.
Oh yeah.
So,
kid-friendly.
Yeah. Legally.
Right.
It's been parents after
Love
they've been through the museum.
They're like, let's go have a
But the timing worked out where our lease was running up, and we were, again, like, we had some financial power that enabled us to sort of like swallow it's expensive to move, period.
Right.
Yeah.
And certainly the rent was going to be a lot more, but it offered so much more. So that was June of 2016 is when we opened up down here.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And it's just sort of like felt, and everything else, not because of us, like just sort of in sync with us, has really grown around here, where this has become like a pretty vibrant part of Portland.
Well, we've come in when you can't find parking.
Yeah, and that's I will take this moment.
Filled.
Yeah,
it's great. No, it's
but
great
also
because
take the
there's
moment
so
to say,
many people, which is
Industrial
awesome.
Way, no pay for parking, awesome. We were tenants there, we're tenants here, so that's one thing. Not saying that's where you guys were going, but like, as with any new chapter, it comes with its own challenges.
Yeah,
parking and all that stuff's definitely one of our biggest pains.
I was saying that it was full. Like that's why, like when we came in, it's full. There's
well,
so
it turns
many
out
people
don't like to pay, and I get it. I wouldn't like to pay either.
Yeah.
And
but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Compared to other places we've been, like
we've paid some hot prices
Nashville.
for parking for like 2 or 3 hours a couple of times.
Like this is not. I understand.
But that's first world problems.
Yes, first world.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, I'm gonna pay a couple bucks to like go have a nice beer.
Yeah.
So like, it's okay. Like, so I understand.
Yeah.
For sure. But it's not the most. So, anyways, okay. So when y'all moved in, obviously this is a lot bigger than a 10-barrel.
Yeah. Huge, beautiful facility.
Yeah.
Were y'all still at a 10-barrel whenever y'all had moved, or how y'all upgraded?
Yeah, we moved. We pretty much took everything with us, same system, and just had a lot of fermenters basically built to move in with.
Gotcha.
And then did that for about a year. By that point, we had certainly upgraded from the Crowler canning line, basically.
There you go.
So we brought the canning line over.
So a little faster.
Yeah. Grew into this. Like this felt like even Industrial Way felt like impossible to fill, and it fills up so quick. And same deal here. About a year after we moved down here, we got a 20-barrel system, which is still the same one we're rocking on.
Oh, nice.
Really showing its wear, though. So that's sort of like we're gonna have to figure. Not that we necessarily need a bigger system, but it's just we've brewed it into the ground pretty much. So trying
Lots of good beer.
Yeah, trying to figure that out. We have a fully solar-powered warehouse now that we were able to build a couple years ago which has been huge because at the time we didn't need a lot of office space, but as our distribution fleet has grown, we still self-distribute in most of the state. So
nice.
We have 3 or 4 vans that are out all the time. And honestly, a huge part of storage for any brewery nowadays, or most any brewery, is just can storage.
Right.
So that's a huge part of what's next door. It feels like space is still hard to come by, but it still feels like, And another huge addition was the kitchen, which is in the winters closed Monday and Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. But that was sort of a post-COVID thing that just sort of, again, where my brother is very forward-thinking, and I'm maybe... He's the gas, I'm the brakes, is sort of what we say sometimes when it comes to business development. And usually meet somewhere in the middle, and that works out really well.
Nice.
But I think he saw the forest from the trees, and we were like, okay, this people just flooding in here and soaking up every drop of our beers going, we need to provide more of an experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Food trucks, which we had relied on to that point, were also just because of sort of the parking situation. We're just harder to negotiate down here.
Yeah.
So the kitchen's been an awesome add-on that just has really made us like, I never wanted to like be part of a restaurant at all. It was scary. I knew nothing about it. I still barely know anything about it, but they're extremely talented in there, and it's just really just elevated the experience here. All the more.
Nice.
I love it. I think y'all do have the most beautifully painted kitchen I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
In-house artists.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
That's amazing.
The gradient is beautiful.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so, like, I know he does a lot of this stuff. Like, how did y'all kind of design, like, what did y'all want the feel of this tap room to be, and, like, the can art and, like, all the things? How did that kind of come together?
Sure. All our art, especially early on when it was, we started with me, Pete, and then one of my best friends, he's still with us, our sort of lead brewer, Seth. So it was the three of us to start. So everyone has their hands, but at that point, all the art, all the marketing direction was and Pete. He's awesome at it. Since we've grown, like we have a creative director now and a small marketing department, but they kill it. So all that is to say, that'd be a better question for him.
Yeah, okay.
He's
it's beautiful.
It's
like you come in, like, I mean, obviously a lot of breweries are in like old warehouses or
they really lend
buildings.
themselves to this. This was an old like train repair place.
Damn.
Like these were all like trains would just drive kind of through here.
The windows and everything.
Wow.
Like, it's just beautiful.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's worked out awesome.
You come in and you just want to hang out and you want to look at all of the details and like the artwork. And
we say this about a lot of places, but this definitely has like personality and intention in every aspect of it.
Thank you.
So it's just like a really
you also
cool...
have Crocs too. Like more breweries need to do Croc merch, please.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The Croc
There's so
merch.
much to look at.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about the back wall on the...
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Yeah. So that was one of my best friends, Forrest Stone. He's done a lot of like welding and fabrication work for us over the years. He's teaching. He teaches at a college now, but at that time he was sort of freelancing. So he had this. We kind of knew we had a very small kind of version of just maybe like a 6x2 overhead sort of version of that same thing that he had made with sort of those ripple effects. So he had the idea to like, well, we can do the same thing, just way bigger.
Like huge.
Rad.
And so he did that with a chainsaw.
He did that with a chainsaw?
That entire wall with a chainsaw.
That is epic.
Yeah.
How in the world?
I still ask myself the same question. I
That's
saw him
so
do
crazy.
it, and it was still
Did
just
he
insane.
put it up on the wall and then do it, or was it down on the ground and...
No, it was all
So
in
he put
place.
it
So
up,
he
so
used
he
a scissor
just-
lift and just sort of, worked his way
This just shows how
through it.
well it is. I thought it was like almost like there's a mat over it, and then the mat was like kind of bubbled. I'm now realizing that's like that's 100%. That's incredible.
Yeah, he's
way to go.
Incredibly
We'll take a photo. We'll tag Forrest.
Well,
You said.
I already took a photo.
Okay,
of it,
gotcha.
so
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, no, he's the man. He's helped us out with all sorts of stuff over the years.
I love that so much. It's just a very vibrant. I don't know. You just want to be here for a while.
Yeah,
you know?
thank you so much.
Yeah.
You
thank
just
you
want to
so
come
much.
hang out, have some food,
Yeah.
do some good beer, take some home.
Yeah.
All the good things. I love that so much.
Well, we got a couple questions left. I wanted to ask you kind of talked about your team and expanding and growing, and this is something that we talk about a lot in this industry. And we just like to hear other people's thoughts for maintaining employees and like the work-life balance and mental health has been a big conversation in the brewery space. What are like keys to success or something that you've learned over the years that you've applied that have been successful for you here at Bissell Brothers?
I think in general, just sort of reflecting on it, I think early on when hiring someone, especially when we were so small, the instinct was very much like to try to find people like you, which maybe makes communication easier. But ultimately, you end up with a lot of like redundant skill sets. So I think like early on, it was like hiring all friends, like and almost all of those friends are still here. So
nice.
So it's not that. But when I look at our team now, I think just there's so many different lanes that individuals occupy that allow ultimately everyone to lean into what they are good at.
Wonderful.
And in terms of work-life balance, my wife, was sort of like the foundation of our HR program. I think I'm just extremely proud of what we're able to offer employees in terms of both, like you say, work-life balance, but also I think we have a very robust benefits package here. We've always been able to, I think pay well above the industry standard. And yeah, it's like it was easier maybe to overlook those things early on when again, you're in this magic, wild rush of just everything. It's so cool to even be, and as some of like that.
I don't need health benefits. I'll fix my back 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now even though there's sometimes this thing we've had to grapple with where doing these things that are ultimately super beneficial for all of those, you run the risk of when you do these changes step by step, there's this weird aversion sometimes, both from myself, both from ownership, but also even the employees of are we just getting corporate here or what?
Right.
But ultimately now, some of those grumblings early on, now you flash forward and we're corporate, so if you burn yourself, you don't have to work for as long as it takes to not work.
Yeah.
But it is. You lose some of that freewheeling mentality or whatever, but people's health isn't really a freewheeling thing.
No, it's easy to say in your early 20s.
Yeah, totally.
When you hit your 30s, you're like, oh, fuck.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, Seth's in his mid 40s, and like I say, brews more beer than anyone here. So just little things let's make a way for bulk or sort of bulk grain conveyance has been a slow thing where early on it was I took a lot of pride in climbing up the grist case and dumping every bag in.
Oh, yeah.
But now it's you don't need just it's not some badge of honor to be busting your ass in ways that aren't really benefiting anyone. They're not benefiting the beer either.
Yeah.
So we've a lot of continuous small investments in things to just make, I think, just existence here a little more sustainable.
As the spouse of someone who loves to brew and has done the hard work and the hard lifting, I appreciate the safety measures because I appreciate it.
And we've been lucky to not have nothing catastrophic happen here, but we've had small incidents with a forklift, or like I say, some burn stuff. You're working with super hot water all the time. Eventually, some things are bound to happen, and the peace of mind now with obviously you never want any of that to happen, but sort of being able to reflect on when those incidents have happened, and sort of the path through them is I think everyone wins.
Yeah, for sure.
I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that brewers, and I like how you said badge of courage or badge of honor.
Totally. It's for that.
Absolutely, and we wear it as being yes, and then it's almost every new person we're you got to do this too.
Totally.
Yeah.
But as you get older and wiser, you're also no, we don't need to subject people to that anymore just because it's I went through it, so you have to go through it. And I think that is because, and it was going to multitasking in a brewery is obviously a skill you need, but I started realizing that the people that they said they were quote unquote the hardest workers were multitasking 8 to 10 jobs, but it was super reckless and super dangerous.
Totally.
And you're just it does not need to be that way. We can take steps to slow down because that's also better for the beer quality. It's better for everything else.
You're going to be around to brew the beer. That's essential.
1,000%. Yeah. And I think without really realizing it, I think I set some bad standards early on for just, trying to do everything. You know, and trying to sort of lead by example in that sense. And I think there was definitely a positive cultural shift when I sort of and it wasn't come on, you need to do it, but truly just trying to go overboard for myself every day and just being able to, I touched on a little bit, also separating my identity from I'm more than just this company. This company is really important to me. It's important to everyone, the livelihoods of everyone we hire. But I think there's having backed off that a little bit, and just sort of diversified my life a little bit better. I think
that's a good way to put it.
The brewery has benefited from that too, in sort of backwards way. If you will.
I like that.
But I mean, you can't pour from an empty cup. So
totally,
for your
1,000%.
For your cup to be full.
Yeah, my cup was dry for a while. I think realized that. Yeah. My wife really helped me realize that too.
Yeah, that's so great.
Hey, props to her.
Yeah.
What is the strategy for beers that you all are brewing? Do y'all have certain flagships that you always have, or are you always changing? What does that strategy look like for you?
Sure. It's definitely changed so substance is still like 65-70% of what we make, which is a blessing and much more of a blessing. But can sometimes, I still got into this for creative reasons. So as we've grown, and especially as we're sending beer to a little bit more markets, it kind of hinges on our ability to make the humongous variety that would be like, as frankly, I think it's a tale as old as time. Like as brewers, like I'd love to be brewing like a dark mild. Still a business, so balancing these things. So trying to sneak those. I think we do like traditional styles really, really well. And it sometimes frustrates me that that's not at all really what we're known for. But again, like it'd be when it's just your neck on the line or whatever, but like whatever, you don't really choose what you get to be associated with and known for. And so I think trying to balance like leaning in, but also not leaning in too hard because things feel like there's a sense of like, well, I don't really know what next year will be like beer stylistically or whatever. So not trying to lean. I think for a company, we're not obviously like a huge brewery, but at least for Maine, we're like pretty big. We do about 13,000 barrels a year.
Oh, damn. That's a big brewery.
So there's what nimbleness means for us is definitely different for a 1-barrel brewery that makes 500 barrels a year. Or, whatever. That math doesn't really work out. But you know what I mean. But I think that's always been a core tenet of us is you have to retain a level of nimbleness because I think if anything of the last 5 years or whatever shown, things can change in a hurry, and if you're not ready for that change and whatever that, or ready to adapt to that change, then things can get bad in a hurry.
Oh yeah,
for sure. We definitely have talked about that with several breweries, and so like you have to. Change is not always easy, but a necessity at times for sure, and so. It's cool that y'all have that kind of at the forefront too. Yeah, and I think for a lot of COVID definitely sort of like narrowed our focus just by the means of like, well, certainly no one coming to the tap room for a while. Distro is where it's at, and in distro, like there's a balance of people want new, but there's only so much new you can have to still sort of still like make everyone happy. So do y'all do like pilot stuff here? Like do y'all get to put stuff out here that maybe you don't put out to distro then? We definitely have a little. We actually have Austin Street's original brewery is our pilot system. It's a 1-barrel system on wheels. So we use that occasionally. But we sort of our main sort of pilot focus it's called the You Earned It program. So it's a lot of breweries like sort of similar to like Maine Beer Company's Black Barn series where it's an employee sort of recipe submission. There's a charitable contribution, and that's usually where some of like the more off the wall sort of stuff comes from. But I also like we'd have to be. I've been, and not in like a egotistical way, but I think 1 barrel like I'd have to be trying to do something super weird to feel like a 1 barrel would be the way to do it, just because of how quickly I'd have to be using some crazy ingredients, I guess, where otherwise with just how much is on the internet, with just like the community of brewers you can talk to, I think, I'd be pretty confident doing most things.
Gotcha.
That's cool, though. I love that. It's always just, I think I know him and I know me, and we always like to try all the new things, and we get to go to all the breweries all the time. So we always like to try all the different things. So I think as someone who owns a brewery, I'm sure that you try other beers and you're like, oh, I would like to try that, or I like to try this.
My biggest thing is I'm really, really hoping this is the year that West Coast IPA really comes truly back. It's sort of been flirting with that for a while, and I think just with where my palate's at, like it's I love hazy IPA, don't get me wrong. It's like I owe so much to it. But at the same time, just that it's such a nice break from where you still get but it's such a different expression of hops. So I'm trying to force as many of those as possible into the schedule, but it's been an uphill battle.
So
forceful education to the public.
We're here for 3 weeks, so I'll drink as much as I can.
We finally have one coming out.
Nice.
Depending on how the finding goes, either tomorrow or Wednesday.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we'll have to come back.
I've been eagerly awaiting.
Good.
We love this. West Coast, so but we love West Coast IPAs for sure.
But in the Pacific Northwest, like when did hazy IPA start to sort of like replace that?
I think I started to see it. I mean, I started working in breweries in 2015, but I was drinking craft beer in 2011. I graduated 2010 out of high school, and I never drank in high school. So when I moved to college in Oregon, that's when my friends and Rogue was around. But I think I really remember. I think it might have been Georgetown or Rubens started putting out, and Urban Family Brewing in Seattle. Urban Family Brewery started doing lactose IPAs were like a huge kick for like a short stint. And so I think that was almost like the foray into like something sweet that had like tropical fruit flavors that also could be like hoppy and bitter. And then I think that's when people really started to fuck around with like, hopping and leaving stuff in suspension, adding more like wheat or oat into your grist. And so I saw it probably around like 2013 is when I think Rubens, Georgetown, and Fremont Brewing like put into their core beers like a hazy IPA, and you started hearing that because there was a lot of, and that was around the time too with Ballast Point. Ballast Point was getting big and was I think either sold or was about to sell, but there was actually a lot of contention from people in the West Coast being like no, like that's not an IPA, like we don't drink slurry beer, things like that. But then it came and then never went away. And I mean, the brewery I worked at, I vividly remember Travis being like, I will be dead before I brew a fucking hazy IPA. And then sure enough, about like a year later, it was like...
Travis still alive?
He is. He's still there. Yeah. He's a good guy, but it's all that dogma. There's so much old dogma around. I mean, that was also people... Like breweries would kind of like be begrudging, being like, well, you got to earn your stripes before we can collaborate or talk to you. And it was just kind of like, oh no, we're all here to support and lift everybody up.
But I think, like you said, like it's a business and it's the people's drink, and they wanted it. And
whether you like it or not, who comes in the door kind of controls what you're going to make at the end of the day.
And I mean, for the money that was happening, people, I think it really kicked us in the ass because we for a while stayed off. Like, we're not going to do a hazy IPA. We had funny enough, we always did a CDA. We did a black IPA. Nobody was like
nobody was ordering those.
But we were like late to the game when we started dropping our Willie Mays hazy IPA. We were like, oh fuck, all right, I guess we better start doing this. And so it's like you're saying, being nimble, and you can have your own judgments, but you have to run a business. So it's like how you do that. And so, I think, that 2013 to about 2015 is where it seeped into Washington State. And then Oregon, I think it probably was in Oregon. And I think it was, again, there were so many breweries in Oregon. It wasn't like super mainstream, but you could go find a hazy IPA beer. It's
funny you say the timeline because we brewed for like a year and a half using Chico, and then sort of like having been to Vermont and just being like, there's something special with these beers. We switched our house yeast just to American Ale too, but it was different enough where it really like completely changed the appearance and kind of mouthfeel of the beer. But a good amount of accounts pulled us at that time for sort of those same reasons. Like, it's all water under the bridge now, but like Navarre Res was like, kind of took that more old school approach. Like this isn't beer. Time. And then I think enough time passed I looking back, it's like I get it. That was a big change. It was the same beer, and suddenly it looks completely different. But it sometimes feels like that's just been part of the brewing fabric for so long. But no, timeline is actually pretty similar, which surprises me a little bit.
No, that's funny. Yeah, I remember when people would have like the Alchemist, they'd bring Hetty Topper, like traveled in somebody's back of their car for like 2 months, and it'd be at some beer store in like Washington State, and they would call that a hazy IPA because you couldn't see all the way through it. They'd be like, yeah, dude, this is like a quintessential hoppy beer, but they're like, but we can't call it like a clear beer. And now you could totally consider that like a clearer beer than some of the beers that you do drink.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I was definitely not late to the game. I came in my own time to the craft beer industry.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
You're like a wizard.
So it's been so fascinating for me to like see, one, like we've been able to travel coast to coast, and we've been down, to the Gulf of Mexico and up this way, and so it's so cool to like see all the different regions of beer and like kind of what's popular in different areas, and like what breweries are doing and what some of their flagships are and how they've changed or how they haven't changed. And so I think I've been able to enjoy like the diversity of all the different craft beer opportunities that we've been able to have, and like be able to enjoy a lot of different things. And like, I don't know, I think for us being on the West Coast, it was nice to kind of pull away from the West Coast for a while, because it's so saturated with beer, which is amazing. I'm not going to hate it.
Yeah.
We love it. But it was cool to like come back to the West Coast after a couple of years and be able to like experience this East Coast beer scene and like all the things that y'all have to offer. And honestly, like if you would have told me that we would have spent almost 5 months in Maine doing beer podcasting, I would have been like, in Maine? Like,
yeah, probably, the West Coast probably doesn't feel so brewery saturated anymore.
No,
Yeah, it's like where is it?
Like
Yeah,
we like honestly have spent so much time, and there's so many good breweries here in Maine.
Yeah, and good
like,
people.
Good
It's
people.
astounding.
Like it really does astound me how many. Once we got into it, I'm like, there's a lot of beer here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think we still. I mean, it's skewed because like our population, but I still think we're a second or third in breweries per capita.
That's
it's
awesome.
So wild. It's so wild. We love it. We love the East Coast. We love what y'all are doing.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're at an hour
I know we
30.
just have our last question.
Yeah.
Well, no, we have two.
All right, go ahead.
First of the two last questions. What are you excited for this year? Is there anything big happening? Events, parties, festivals, collaborations, beers?
Yeah, ESB Festival hosted by Substance.
yeah. Sign me up.
Yeah.
I think probably the biggest thing on our horizon this year, we'll kind of for the first time ever dabble in some. We're gonna launch like a THC beer or THC seltzer. Sorry.
Oh, nice.
Not that we're putting, but just sort of like that'll be pretty much the first thing ever, other than hop water, that we've made that isn't beer.
Okay, gotcha.
So that sort of feels
That's
like,
exciting.
let's see what this is like. But also, there's a new minor league soccer team coming to
Oh,
Portland.
wow.
Oh, rad.
That's like been a pretty big deal in
That's
town.
huge.
And we are like a founding partner of that. So we'll
Okay.
have we'll basically operate the beer garden at the stadium.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
sick.
we have-
Congrats.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
That's so cool.
Another like, P-driven thing that was nerve-wracking to me at first, but makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
So
and you get a sick jersey from it, too.
yeah,
That's
their
rad.
jerseys are awesome. Yeah, so we have
Are your name going to be on it somewhere, maybe?
it'll be more on the beer garden. I
Oh,
think
okay.
LL
got
Beans
it.
on the jersey,
Oh,
so that's
okay.
a whole different
Oh,
tier
okay.
than
That's a
we're in.
different
Those
Yeah.
LL Bean.
Yeah. But
That's
no, it looks
amazing.
awesome, and
Y'all can make your own beer garden shirts.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
We do have a beer that we just sort of tease released in the fall. For that explicit purpose. Big Simcoe bomb, so really nice. And so that'll be a big thing, just both for the city for sure this summer, and
Yeah.
also for us as the brewery. But yeah, I think that's on
so
the
sick.
immediate horizon. That's kind of
That's
the big
so
thing.
cool.
Very
Love that so
cool.
much.
Yeah.
We'll have to come back to a game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna. They
Yeah.
sold out. It's like 5,000 or 6,000 seats, and they sold out of season tickets like.
Oh,
I couldn't
sweet.
believe. I
Oh my
really
gosh,
could not
that's
believe.
There's
it.
been a
cool.
huge, I mean, when we were back in Oregon, there's the
Yeah.
Hillsboro hops and then the Portland pickles. But I feel like people, because regular like MLB, NBA, those are so expensive that people are like, fuck it, we're just going to go to the minor league games all the time.
Totally.
And it's so much fun.
We went
Yeah.
to one
so
in
much fun.
Oklahoma too.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah, like it was such
They're a
a great
blast.
time.
Yeah, we have like there's like basically the minor league teams of the Celtics and the NBA and the Red Sox both in, so they'll all be kind of in one complex. Those are
Yeah.
already sort of proven concepts to your point. It's
Yeah.
Nice.
way easier barrier to entry, and you still see like sports at an extremely high level.
Yeah,
So,
Right.
it's so much fun.
Love it. I love it so
Alrighty.
much. Okay,
The
last question. So, preface, we asked this to everybody, obviously, but we started asking this question when we first started traveling, and we have like a list of this like answers to this question from like a bunch of people across the U.S. So, but now we get to ask it for our podcast. So, our last question is: if you were to give yourself, as your younger self, a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I'd go back to what I said. Like, don't remember that your identity is just more than what
wonderful.
you're doing. Yeah, I think that was the thing that I got kind of without realizing caught up on a while, and it was helpful to like be able to like summon the energy to do all the things that need to be done. But at the same time, I think it was in the long. It's just no way to live long
Right.
term, and I think learn through experience, and if I could have learned that a little earlier, it probably would have been better for everyone. Certainly the people I worked with. Yeah.
Hey,
yeah,
it's
kind
hard.
of an asshole for a period.
I think
It's
it's hard
okay.
when
In
your
maturation,
name,
we all go through it.
Yeah.
yeah, and when your name is literally on everything, and it's the product that you've been dreaming about. I think it's, I mean, just in its own due time. So,
Yeah.
like,
I've been an asshole to employees, and I don't even own the brewery. So, kudos to you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's, and also I think not as much employees, but my brother and I's relationship was tough for a while, and
Yeah.
I think that's just sort of probably natural, doing something like that with your brother. But I think, we both sort of like matured in our own ways, but I think I was definitely so wrapped up in that I think our relationship suffered for a period. And,
Gotcha.
yeah, it's all good now.
that's
There you
good.
go.
Yeah, it's all
Love
good
that
now.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
having
for your
us.
time.
Yeah,
This
thank
is
you guys
great.
so much.
Yeah.
I had a blast.
Yeah, it's so
Sweet.
great
And you did
too.
great for being
Yeah.
Rusty at podcast.
Thanks.